the next moderator, Ms. Susan Mugwe, who will be taking us through the next high-level panel, Advancing the Continental Agenda on Traditional African Vegetables. Apigiwe makofi kabisa mpaka afike hapa. Makofi kabisa. Isn't she looking lovely? Yes.
Yeah, as you heard, my name is Susan Mugwe, and I will be moderating the panel on the high-level panel. And before I do that, I'm going to ask all of you to stand. And as you're all standing, I'm going to ask the panelists that are in the room to please walk up to the stage. So if everybody could just stand on your feet, everyone. So as you can see in your programs, and as I've already said, this is the high-level panel. I don't know why it is called a high-level panel. But we have representatives from across the spectrum. We have the financial sector represented. We have the policy sector. We have people in trade. We have representatives from the research aspect. And all of them will tell us in very simple language and very simple terms, what is it that we need to do going forward? Or how can we commit to taking this conversation forward so that it is not just a run-of-the-mill conference discussion where we leave everything right here where we came? What do we need to take forward, and how do we need then to engage on a more deliberate level going forward from here? So I'm going to ask each of them to very quickly, in less than 5 seconds, to introduce yourself, tell us which sector you represent, and hopefully Caleb, the guys that are virtual. And then we'll also make sure that those that are on virtual will also introduce themselves. So I'll start on my far left. There you are. Please just introduce yourself very briefly.
Hi, Chair, thank you. My name is Lawrence Haddad. I'm the Executive Director of the Global Alliance for Improved Nutrition, and I'm delighted to be with you, even if it's only virtually. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, next we are going to go to Mr. Mungwa Tosha. And this is going to be a very informal panel, so we are going to drop all the titles. So if I don't call you Professor or Professor Emeritus or Doctor, please don't take offense, because we want it to be as informal as possible. Now we are going to go online and listen to Mr. Mwangi as he introduces himself. Mr. Mwangi, if you can hear me.
Thank you very much. I'm James Mwangi, Group CEO of Equity Bank. And I'm glad to be on this panel speaking about agriculture. Thank you.
We go now to across the room.
Thank you very much. My name is Judy Matu. I'm the National Chairlady for the Association of Women in Agriculture Kenya, where we have a presence in all the 47 counties, which are the devolved units in Kenya. Thank you very much.
Okay, next. You can share the mic.
Thank you very much. My name is Ediltruda Temba. I am the Sales and Marketing Manager for East West Seed Tanzania. East West Seed is a multinational tropical vegetable seed company dealing with the research and the development of improved vegetable seeds. Thank you.
And last but not least.
Hello. Yeah, good afternoon. Yeah, my name is Mboka Mwanitu. I'm here representing the development financial institution called TADB. It's a government institution where we deal with catalyzing financing and transforming agriculture.
Okay, do we have Dr. Maurice Akiri online? Okay. All right. When the technical team will let us know when Dr. Akiri is online, we'll have him introduce himself. Now, as you know, it is said that money makes the world do what? Not the sun, eh? They taught us wrong. So money makes the world go round, so they say. So we're going to shoot the first question to Mr. Mwangi. And the question is in two parts. So the first part is, do financial institutions view African traditional vegetables as an important and viable investment opportunity? If so, are there examples of successful investments in traditional African vegetables value chains?
Our African vegetables are part of our food, and as a result, as a treasured food, it has a demand in a marketplace. And anything that has a demand in the marketplace, banks are willing to finance. Given that it's under food and agriculture, that is really not a real challenge. However, as banks, when we go to classify the type of crops, the type of food crops that we have financed, you rarely see African traditional vegetables as a big component. And when we try to do depth analysis, the biggest challenge has been the market or the demand for the vegetables. I think we have westernized so much that we have forgotten or had a challenging opinion about our traditional foodstuffs, among them vegetables. And as a result, the market has not been very well established. And if the market has not been very well established, demand is then weak. And once demand is weak, the supply side is not able to grow fairly well. And as a result, we don't have very strong food supply chains. New ones are emerging, like zucchini in Nairobi, and we're supporting the initiative, the outgrowers or the suppliers. We are supporting them, but it's not in a volume that make a significant dent in the financial numbers of a banking system. So what I would really advocate is a policy where we advocate for traditional African vegetables among the consumers so that we build significant demand. Markets are always able to respond to demands. As farmers respond to demands, that will give banks an opportunity then to do the financing. Unfortunately, banks have always restricted themselves to what they know best, and that is financing. So they haven't done very much in terms of promotion of the product. They tend to believe they're in the value chain and their role is to finance. And that is where I would see maybe the banks have an opportunity maybe to invest in a specific area like African traditional vegetables.
And I'm sure the participants can begin seeing where the opportunities lie. How do we create the demand so that the bank will also respond? So I hope you took that into consideration. And although the money makes the world go round, it can't do that effectively without policy. So this question will go to Mr. Mungu Atosha. And what we've been wondering is, why haven't African traditional vegetables not been part of the mainstream agriculture and food policy? And what needs to be done to elevate the status of these important crops? But in instances where they are part of the agriculture and food policy, why is there policy abstinence in their promotion of their production, the marketing and consumption?
Thank you very much. First of all, as the previous speakers mentioned, currently we need to create a big demand for these African traditional vegetables, because if the demand is not there, of course, no one will be interested in engaging in a sustainable business or promoting these vegetables. So the first thing I think is a suggestion is, first of all, we have to continue to create awareness and promotion of these traditional vegetables so that majority of the people, especially those who are living in urban areas where the traditional vegetables are not commonly utilized, can be able to understand that traditional vegetables are equally nutritious like conventional or exotic vegetables. This is the first approach, and this can be achieved through media or through any other outlet of information that will be able to get large audience and attention. So the first thing is not about improving the policy on the ground, because the policies are already there, and the policies are not discriminating against traditional vegetables or conventional vegetables. But the only thing that is lacking is the demand. And I think even the breeding programs should be demand driven to know what the large percent of people in our community wants to feed on. Thank you.
Judy, they say there is no demand. You are a farmer, and specifically looking at the sector of smallholder production. And to produce and make a livelihood out of African traditional vegetables means overcoming many challenges. Can you tell us if demand is one of those challenges, or what other kind of challenges do smallholder farmers, particularly women, face?
Thank you very much. Demand from the growers, the production side, is definitely a challenge, but a challenge that can be managed. Just like Dr. Mwangi explained earlier, the issue with financing, they look at the end, which is demand. The production side, the same case, because when you're producing, you need to know who are you selling to. Now, that is not the only challenge that the women farmers face. There are so many. I was here briefly to listen to the wonderful youth panel that was here. And women and youth are all within the marginalized groups, and some of the challenges are the same. However, there is a key challenge, and I think we discussed that earlier with you in the morning, and that's on the communication. There exists gaps, gaping, wide gaps between research and farmers. How can we link that? Between policymakers and farmers, between that is science, between the financiers also, because they will sit somewhere. Maybe Dr. Mwangi may confirm that most of the financiers make decisions from an ivory tower, but they need to get down and interact, see what is happening on the ground, and make decisions from a point of information. The other challenge, of course, climate change. And on this, there's a high need for a policy intervention where we can have, some agroecological zoning. I liked a presentation by Dr. Francis Kamau. I don't know if he's here. And I was actually discussing it with him on the importance of linking such information to farmers. Let me know what is the best, what is suitable for a certain area. And that will maximize on production. And at the end of the day, we need to promote traditional African vegetables to the consumers, the end user. Most people will find sukuma wiki and cabbage and all that, the exotics, cheaper than what is indigenous. But again, the gap is we don't know how much the data, how much out there is the demand for African traditional vegetables as opposed to the exotic ones. So we do not want to continue encouraging the consumption of exotic. We have better, nutritious, high value traditional African vegetables. And from this summit, I believe that we are going to overcome some of these challenges. Availability and accessibility of good quality seeds. We've listened to so many presentations about quality seeds. Where is that information? Where are those seeds? How affordable? How accessible? You know, I was part of a a group that was privileged enough to welcome the coconut hybrid in Kenya. We've been having the beyond 10 years of waiting for coconuts to fruit. But now we have a new hybrid, which is fruiting in 3 years. What do we have in the traditional African vegetables? Is that information with the farmers? And is it accessible? Can we have establishment of community-led resource centers? Because we do not have. Again, the research, how are we linking that research with the farmers? Because you're at the research level, we are at the implementation, application level. Can we have that link because it exists? That's also another gap. When it comes to women, there's an issue on land rights. The man will decide how the farm will be used, the land use, the decision making on that. The women will just follow what the men say. So can we have that information with the men also? And also, can we empower the women to be able to make such kind of decisions through training and empowerment? Because that is an issue that exists. Financial inclusion, very critical, very critical. And the decision on how to use the income, the household income. Because some of the decisions, allow me to say this because we are all living in a very patriarchal society here. The decisions on how to use the income, household income, lies heavily on the father of the house. And whatever he decides goes. So when we empower financially these women, I believe they make better decisions, always. And I'm not apologizing for that because we have seen it. Women make very good decisions because a woman will make a decision that will have the interest of everybody in the house. That is why when you empower a woman, you empower a society. So those are some of the challenges that the women are facing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Judy, for that comprehensive response. And as you can hear, the challenge is not just the demand. The challenge is also a gendered challenge. Because in as much as a woman would know what are the benefits of feeding her family with the traditional African vegetables, does she have the requisite decision-making in her home to say, this is what I want to grow on this farm? Yet the man is the one who controls what needs to be grown on the farm. So we also have a challenge where we are competing perhaps cash crops with traditional African vegetables. And even though the woman is the one that provides the labor, the decisions lie elsewhere. So also when we are looking at creating this demand, how do we ensure that we also empower the women who provide most of the contractable labor on our farms? But that was a nice segue into Miss Temba. Where do we get seeds? Where do we get good quality seeds? Are they there? Should we be importing them? Should we be working with all these researchers to have improved varieties of seeds? Should we ask the bankers to fund an investment where we only produce, maybe quick maturing seeds and such? And as you respond to that, could you also tell us if there have been any breeding efforts that have been done to develop improved varieties of these vegetables?
Well, thank you very much. First of all, I'd like to say I'm honored to be a part of this forum. I believe at the end of this discussion, we would have unleashed quite a number of potentials for African traditional vegetables. Well, across the discussions, I've had comments on the demand. Yes, the demand is there, but then it all comes to the question of understanding farmers and understanding the end users. In order to breed for the right varieties or improved varieties, we first need to understand what farmers require in order to produce these varieties. But again, we also need to understand or to be aware if final users are aware of the nutritional values of these traditional vegetables that we are discussing today. So in order to be able to cater for the demand that we have all been speaking and have identified across across the discussions, I think the first and foremost point is first creating awareness with our own farmers, because farmers are at the heart of transforming the agricultural sector. Second, we need to create awareness with the public and the stakeholders on the nutritional values that are available in these traditional vegetables. Most importantly, I would like to note that Africa is blessed with 60% of arable and cultivated land, plus the potential to increase the existing yield. So the continent has the potential to be a part of the global food system. But how do we tap into this opportunity? We have the policymakers that have already established the policies, but then now the exercise or the job lies with the private sectors. What do they bring into the table in order to tap into these opportunities? We have had private companies establish breeding programs and centers. There are trial areas that have already been established. But also companies have had inter-company breeding programs that have proven to be very successful. Right now we have some indigenous vegetables that are improved and farmers are enjoying in our markets. So I would really like to emphasize in this panel, as we keep discussing these opportunities, demand and breeding, we also need to take at heart the needs and the need and wants of farmers who are at the heart of every discussion that we have.
Thank you very much for that concise response. I would like to introduce now Maurice Akiri, if you can hear me.
Yes, I can.
Yourself, what you do, who you work for.
All right, my name is Maurice Akiri. I'm Region Director for CABI Africa, based in Nairobi, Kenya. I think CABI is one of the co-sponsors of this summit. And so, yes, we are part and parcel of the whole program. Thank you.
Thank you, Maurice. I will put you on the spot and ask you, how do you think that governments ought to incentivize related sectors such as research institutions, maybe to have improved seed varieties, environment, looking at climate change adaptation, in order to prioritize the African traditional vegetables in national strategies?
Yeah, thank you very much. I think that's something that listening to all the presentations that have gone forth, it's a gap that we are seeing. Yes, there's the goodwill from the farmers, the youth, and particularly women, but we don't have policy instruments that encourage such kind of intervention. So one of the key things that is being piloted in most of the countries is an element of coming up with trial sites to see how these traditional African vegetables can be generated, so that we have we move away from the farmer saved seeds and come up with improved varieties. So I think there's still quite a challenge, because you find that over 90% of traditional African vegetables are still being seeds are coming from farmer saved seeds from the previous fields. So governments need to come up with policies that again encourage the improvement of such seeds. But for that to happen, I think there are a lot more other policy intervention areas that are required. And particularly listening to the earlier presentations, we need to create more awareness to stimulate demand. As long as we can not be in a position to stimulate demand, however much we produce will still not be taken up, and particularly by the urban folks, as I heard earlier this morning. So yes, government has a key role to avail all the opportunities available, the policy instruments that then encourage people to de-risk all their interventions. I did later. I think I did summarize that on some key slides, which some 3 slides which I can share on at some point when called for.
Thank you very much for that. And we know that one of the recent initiatives by the African Union Commission has been the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. I'm going to ask Mr. Njau, is there any potential for a more formal or regional or even continental trade for African traditional vegetables using this initiative of African Continental Free Trade Agreement? What should we do to ensure that we capture this opportunity that has been provided on the continent?
Thank you very much, moderator. First of all, I think I have to agree that there is a lot of potential for formal trade in the regional and the Africa trade for Africa traditional vegetables. Looking at the pattern of the regional and the continental trade, you will find that the intra-regional and the intra-Africa trade is very low. For example, you find, for example, the intra-EAC trade is around 11.42%. And the remaining 87% is a trade between EAC and very little with the other Africa RECs like COMESA and SADC, and around 84% is trade between Africa and the rest of the world. And also when you look, for example, the intra-Africa trade is around 15%. But when you look at the other continent like Europe, you find the intra-trade is around 69%. You go to Asia is around 49%. You go North America is around 31%. This tells us that the remaining percent, actually we can boost our trade and take that percentage. That is one. But we are talking of African Continental Free Trade Area, which started this January. And the African Continental Free Trade Area, the African countries, the 54 which have already signed the agreement, we are expecting to liberalize tariff by 90% of the products of the tariff. This tells us that our product now can be traded across Africa duty-free. And here we are talking of the market of 1.2 billion people. And when you look, the GDP is around 3.4 trillion. Now, when you look, for example, UN Economic Commission for Africa is projecting that after liberalization, which will take around 10 years for least developed country, which are just 13, but 5 years, for example, almost all the Africa country will have already liberalized the tariff. And the projection from UNECA is expecting that the trade will increase from 15%, which is around 50 billion USD to 70 billion USD. So you find there is a huge potential because, for example, when you look, for example, in 2015, Africa can ensure that we have a good policy and effective policy in terms of diversifying our export and also sophistication of the product. Here we are talking of adding value of our product. But also we must make trade more inclusive, where it will involve all the product we have and even involve more stakeholders. That's how we can make sure that the Africa countries take advantage of the potential we have. But also we need to deal with other constraints. Like we must make sure that we have a very, apart from policy, we also engage on the trade facilitation, where we are making sure that our government, they are supposed to facilitate trade instead of frustrating trade. We are seeing, for example, there is a lot of ONTB when you are doing intra-African trade. There is a lot of cumbersome, there is a very cumbersome procedures. There is a lot of delay in the borders and along the corridors. Those issues, we have to deal with them to make sure that we take this potential. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. If you recall, on the first day, Mr. Rugalema told us you can't eat potential. So I think Africa needs to stop talking about potential and be very deliberate about what is it that we are going to do. We've had enough about potential. I think it's time for action, isn't it? And Ms. Mwanitu, as a business development officer, I'm sure you've walked into several supermarkets. And what strikes you is that the African traditional vegetables occupy the smallest floor space in these supermarkets. Why do you think this is the case? And what should we do to improve this situation?
Okay, I think what I've gathered from the 3 days that I was here.
Speak a bit louder.
Yeah, what I'm saying, yes, we have been talking about the availability of African traditional vegetables. And if you connect from the farmer perspective to the table, where is the connection between the farmer and the one who is going to eat? And there I come back to your comment on the supermarkets. Supermarkets have their own requirements. They need to have products which are already value added, like standardized. I remember we have seen yesterday a presentation from Professor Jane Ambuko. She's talking about value adding so that you can raise the margin of your product. And then this product can be attractive enough or can have a good presentation so that you can put it on the shelves of the supermarket. So my point really is looking at on my side as a business development officer and coming from a development finance bank is actually transforming these farmers to see supermarket as an entry point for them to sell their product. And as a bank, what we are doing, we have an approach called the integrated value chain financing. We are financing farmers from at the level where they're producing to the point that they are showcasing their products. So our instrument really look at extending financing into the production level, but also making sure that they overcome the post-harvest loss issues, but also on the aspect of making sure that product is at the supermarket. There's a packaging issue where we extend financing to farmers so that they can have good packaging and also showcase these products at the supermarket level. But again, we also have a special initiative for women farmers and youth, where we are targeting to have a scheme that promote their visibility. Like they should see a supermarket as opportunity for them to sell their products. So for me, really taking a note into this conference is trying to build partnership with the women groups and youth groups. I've seen amazing youth groups from different universities. I think some of the universities already have established innovation centers. They're trying to develop different varieties, but they're also going further, developing even packaging materials so that they can pack these products. And for example, for African traditional vegetables, which are really very low consumed, they have this opportunity to take it further through our program, which is a visibility program, to showcase our own food in the domestic market. Yeah.
Thank you very much for that. Lawrence, if you can hear me.
I can
As
hear you.
Executive Director, thank you. As the Executive Director for GAIN, what lessons can we learn from the GAIN Alliance in terms of utilization of traditional African vegetables to promote nutrition? And how plausible would it be to include these vegetables as a mandatory part of the food relief distribution by humanitarian agencies? For example, in response to disasters, but also in initiatives such as homegrown school feeding programs, looking at the work that WFP does, the work that UNICEF does. How can we ensure that this gets into part of the supply chain?
Thank you, Chair. Great questions. So from a gain perspective, we always tend to look at things from a demand side, a supply side, and an enabling environment side. So on the demand side, as the panelists have rightly said, it's all about how do we create demand for traditional agriculture, traditional African vegetables. And I think there are sort of three ways of doing it. One is through public procurement. So the first way, public procurement. Governments buy lots of food. They buy it for schools, for health clinics, for social protection programs, humanitarian response. Governments could choose to buy more traditional African vegetables. They could do that. It'd be an inexpensive way of adding green to school meals, to social protection programs, humanitarian programs. And that would provide a stimulus, a demand stimulus to small farmers, smallholders to produce more of these traditional vegetables. So that's the first thing. The second thing on the demand side that we've learned, again, is that you have to create an exciting brand. You have to, calling vegetables traditional vegetables, it may be the way to go for some groups, but some groups will think if it's traditional, it's boring and unexciting, and I don't want to consume it. So I think we need to get some advertising agencies from the private sector to work with government agencies to create an exciting framing and branding for some of these traditional foods, and they can be done. I mean, in many countries, the ancient grains branding has been very successful with some groups. So I think that's a second thing.
We seem to have lost you. Can you hear us?
I can hear you.
I think they've lost it from Arusha, because we can hear you well.
Can you hear me now still, Arusha? You can hear me, Morris.
Yeah, I can hear you very well.
I think it is Arusha that we have lost.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can everybody hear us? Everybody online can hear us?
I got you back.
James?
I lost you.
I can hear you.
All right, let's go on.
Okay, thank you. Lost you for a while there. Second thing to do is to get private sector agencies, ad agencies, marketing agencies, helping frame and make traditional vegetables appealing, especially to younger people. Third thing on the demand side is I often hear that traditional vegetables have a bitter taste. So how about getting renowned chefs involved in coming up with delicious recipes that use traditional vegetables? So those are kind of three things on the demand side. On the supply side, we often find that agricultural research and development ignores vegetables and definitely ignores traditional agriculture, traditional vegetables. And so that's important to have agricultural R&D, because that can develop higher productivity, more climate resilient, more saline resilient types of vegetables and traditional vegetables. So agricultural R&D, whether it's international or national, needs to focus more on vegetables and on traditional vegetables. Still on the supply side, small and medium businesses, whether they're smallholders or SMEs in the value chain, often can't get access to finance. The big banks, they're too small for the big banks, and they're too big for microfinance. So they're kind of stuck in between the formal sector and the market finance sector. So we need more finance facilities that cater to small and medium enterprises, because these are the enterprises that are going to be supplying the vegetables and the traditional vegetables. And I think third on the supply side is to support startups. Young people want to be entrepreneurs. They want to form startups, especially young people living in urban contexts. They want to form startups, but there isn't enough support to startups to use things like traditional vegetables to develop exciting new businesses. And finally, on the enabling environment, which is the broader environment that we find ourselves in, there isn't enough research into the nutritional value of traditional vegetables or the environmental benefits of traditional vegetables. And if we can find some traditional vegetables that are really high in key micronutrients, key vitamins and key minerals, or we can find some traditional vegetables that are really very important for environmental management and replenishment, then I think you've got something that you can build into the demand side and complete that loop and really begin to say, you know, these vegetables, these traditional vegetables, they really offer something for nutrition and for health and for livelihoods that other kinds of crops don't offer. And then the final issue is going to be, you know, if we be careful what you wish for, if traditional vegetables do become a thriving market and we can generate the demand, which then stimulates the supply, will they become so successful that they'll be taken over by the men, and the women who have been taking the risks then become disenfranchised because it becomes in some sense a cash crop. And in societies where I think one of the panelists said in more patriarchal societies, the risk is that men will take over the crop and women will have ended up taking all the risks but not generating enough of the benefits for themselves and for their families. Back to you, Chair.
Thank you very much for that. And yes, we have seen this happen where before a crop was not of commercial value, but the moment it becomes a cash crop, then the men take over. So as I said, we still need to have this conversation around empowering women when it comes to ownership of productive resources and also enabling them to make these kinds of decisions. Mr. Mwangi, now that we know that most of these crops are grown largely by women, and that we also know your financial institution has a footprint in many African countries, and now given the potential we have had about the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, what would you commit for your institution to support women where you have this footprint to make sure that at least that the African traditional vegetables are viable, that the women are able to access the inputs that they need, and also bearing in mind what Lawrence has said, that they're not too small for your bank and too big for the microfinance institutions. What could you commit to do, even if it is just conceptually, to help the women in this arena?
Thank you very much, Chair. Let me first of all say 52% of all our customers are women. So essentially, we can fairly be described as a women bank. So they have a home in Equity Bank. The second aspect is, if you look at Equity, it has truly focused on the small-scale farmer. It has done the huge weight lifting there, and we have managed to convert 680,000 small-scale farmers into agribusinesses. Again, that speaks about our commitment. If you look at Equity Group Foundation, we have a fully fledged agricultural department, which over the last 5 years have trained over 2.1 million women on financial literacy so that we can build capacity in them. We're strong believers in women because they have a better credit risk. They pay better and their default rates are lower than men statistically, and our experience from Equity Bank. So all that I would do is to really encourage women. We have an aspiration that in 5 years' time, 2025, the entire 30% of our loan book will be in agriculture. We don't dictate to women or to the farmers on what crop they grow. We simply support them. So if women go to traditional African vegetables, that is what we shall support. And we work hand in hand with them. I would like to cite a case of where we sponsored alongside East African breweries, Guardian sorghum. And we said we'll further research and seed multiplication. And today, I'm happy to say East African breweries use Guardian sorghum for beer as opposed to barley because it's grown in the country. That is a process we can do with traditional African vegetables.
There seems to be a paucity of information somewhere, or there is a disconnect because the banks are telling us they have the financing to, to support the producers. The the duty bearers are telling us that there are policies in place to support production. The rights holders, who are the farmers themselves, are telling us they are willing to farm. And in fact, the session just before this was from the youth, and they were telling us they're not afraid of farming, they're just afraid of the risk. Is it that we're not having a conversation, that everything is in existence in isolation? And if that's the case, how do we unlock this? How do we begin having this national conversation?
Thank you very much. I think just speaking from where Dr. Mwangi left, I would say that social impact is a key motivation for any investor to get to assume risk in investing in any smallholder or agribusiness. So we have to talk of where there's value for money. Are we seeing that there's improved livelihoods? Are there job opportunities? Is there value addition? So that then comes back to the type of farming arrangements that we have. So for us to achieve that, you might think of earlier from the youth discussion, they talked of groups coming together. So aggregation is very important because, as we have said, Lawrence did point out that they are too small for the smaller lending institutions, for the bigger lending institutions, and they're too small for the smaller ones. So how do we make them bankable? How do we make these ventures economical? And I think policies are there, but unless and until we have some lessons from either already thriving associations of farmers, you'll find that banks and lending institutions will shy away from doing that. The government, on the other hand, is also under pressure from bilateral donors or government priorities. So how do we entrench this into the systems? And one of the projects that we did in Uganda, if I recall, on traditional African vegetables, was to involve this from the school feeding program, whereby all these nutritional values and economic value additions are entrenched from the primary school level. And then this is discussed into families, and then the groups come together. So I think at the moment, the bigger danger, the bigger drawback we have for traditional African vegetables is the size, the scale at which production is at. So we need to think of having some incubation centers where we can showcase all this, come up with the statistics, including nutritional values that then can inform policy. Because policy, once is evidence-based, it can easily be uptaken by the private sector. So yes, there's a disconnect, but not far-fetched, because a lot has begun to happen. We just need to ensure that we entrench this in our systems at all levels.
Okay, thank you very much for that explanation. I'm going to give an opportunity to the audience. Only 3 questions that have not been asked. If you have a burning question that has not been asked and you'd like to pose the question to any one of our panelists, the first 3 hands to go up. There is one here. Okay, Rugalema, and there's another one over there. Where are the ladies? No questions from the ladies? You don't want loans from Mr. Mwangi or grants from Equity Foundation or from the Tanzania Development Bank? Okay, let's start here with Rugalema.
Hello, panelists, particularly those who are joining us online. First, I want to say hello. Many of you are my good friends. I would have loved to see you here, but unfortunately you can't come. My question goes to Mr. Mwangi. Because of Equity Bank's large footprint in the East African region, that means the opportunities are plenty and probably incomparable to any other bank. So any thoughts about scouting for these potentials and opportunities and probably coming up with the a strategy for the bank to invest or to increase its investment in Africa's superfoods? We have decided we will no longer call them traditional vegetables. We are going to call them Africa's superfoods. Thank you.
Okay, let's have the second question, then the panelists will respond to them in order.
I don't really have a question, but a comment. So I don't know whether this should come in now or perhaps later after the
You
questions.
can still say it now.
Okay, thank you very much. My comment relates to what has been transpiring, particularly on the African continent. I think one of the most important things that we have to realize is that unless the issue of human rights is carefully taken care of, then we can speak a lot and achieve very little. I have had issues here relating to gender parity, women and things like that, things to do with ownership of land. I work for the Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, and so I speak from that particular point. If we can't address issues to do with inequality, issues to do with good governance, issues to do with human rights, then we will not get there. If we start there, then we're 3/4 home. Where am I coming from? If you look at this continent, we have a crop of people that we tend to forget. When African countries were getting their independence way back in the 1960s, we had about 700,000 refugees. And these persons were blamed on colonial rule. Today, over 50 years down the line, you have 29 million of these persons on the continent. And this tells you that we have a major problem there that we need to address before we speak of sustainability on a number of things. Coming to the good work that you're doing in terms of traditional vegetables, please take these people into account. When they come into countries, they need good nutrition after they flee from countries where they cannot be taken care of and are seeking what we call international protection in other countries. Secondly, vegetables is food for them. If you go to refugee camps, the little gardens they have, all these vegetables you've spoken about are there. And then lastly, when they're going back home, the seed kit will be very useful in sustaining a durable solution in terms of return. Thank you.
Thank you very much. There was another question at the back.
Thank you.
And please tell us who your question is directed to.
Okay, I'm actually not directing to someone, but if it will be on the interest of someone, then it will be better. Actually, my question is, there has been investment on pesticide productions, but there has not been investment on training people on application of the pesticides and the uses. As we know that there has been a time, for example, in the community I came from, in which people would not buy vegetables, the local vegetables, because they smell pesticides. And if you ask the farmers, they are saying that the vegetables were sprayed to reduce post-harvest loss, or if it was before the harvest, they were for reducing the effect of the of the pests, but something is not realized. The role of pollinators as in increasing the seed set and also in increasing the production of those vegetables. And also it is decreasing the price of the vegetables to the people. So the vegetable will go to the market and the people will not buy it. So the price goes down and the farmer says, no, I cannot plant anymore because the people are not buying. So I think the investment should also go on training and capacitating groups and people on integrated pest management, and people should know that this is a DDT, this is an acaricide, this is a rodent side, this is a herbicide, so they know where to use them, or less, then problems will happen. I think if you will agree with me, then please, I know you are very, very potential stakeholders. What can you say about this, about pest management and the thing of the like? Thank you.
Judy, I'll ask you to respond to that question. There was one more here, and then we'll try and wrap it up.
So thank you. I am Jennifer from Sokoine University of Agriculture, and my question is directed to Ms. Mboka Mwanitu. As a Principal Business Development Officer in Agriculture Development Bank, I know most of the farmers, especially smallholder farmers, have less knowledge on this Agriculture Development Bank and how does it help them. So my question is, what role does the bank play in helping these farmers know the importance of this bank, and how does it help them in maximizing the profit that they gain from the activities? Thank you.
All right, now we'll go to the responses, and we'll start with Mr. Mwangi. If you could respond to Dr. Rugalema's question.
Thank you very much, Chair. And it is true, Equity has a significant footprint with 14 million customers. So essentially that makes it itself an ecosystem of both producers and consumers. And there is an opportunity there for us really to act as a platform and hopefully become a marketplace where we link the producers and the consumers because 14 million is fairly a big database. The second thing is the spread, the geographical spread of the region the bank is in gives us an opportunity to put on the marketplace various kinds of vegetables grown from different places and by different communities. So I think I took the challenge and we would really look at how maybe creatively we can provide a marketplace or the equity marketplace where buyers and sellers are able to meet during these times of e-commerce. I think in terms of increasing finance, Equity Bank has committed that by 2025, 30% of the entire loan book will be in agriculture. And we want to really to spearhead not just the green revolution, but really transformation of agriculture and value addition in agriculture. And we have determined that as our contribution to the transformation of the continent. One, by furthering food security within the continent, because food security speaks about our dignity as a people. And two, as a resource, given that the abundance of labor and land on the African continent, maybe there is a competitive advantage that we could lead the continent into. Given that at the moment we have a funding in excess of 1 trillion shillings, $10 billion, we are talking about then $3 billion or 300 billion Kenya shillings being available for farmers. But I bet we need more partnerships and collaborations, also work in an integrated way so that everybody does what they are best at. The research team does research on seed multiplication and all the entrepreneurs, value addition and processing and aggregation and logistics, while banks then we focus on financing. I think we need to team up together, particularly with NGO world and government in training. I think the need for capacity building is essential, while the government also can do promotion because it's not just about creating the market, it's creating revenues and livelihoods for the farmers. We'll never transform Africa unless we transform the farmers because the 70% of our African population are living out of agriculture. Let me, Madam Chair, add my voice to the issue of human rights. I think COVID-19 has taught us that the world was not perfect and it has extreme weaknesses. The vulnerability and the fragility that we have seen of the world has really exposed the worst of what was hidden. And as I truly then believe, we shouldn't rebuild the world, but we should build the world better. In building the world better after COVID, I think we need to integrate things like governance, because it's governance that has led us to where we are, that fragility, that unsustainability of the world. And if this could be then included in all subjects, things like the issue of inequality, it is no longer sustainable. And hence, the need to build the world much better, to be purpose-driven, and purpose includes human rights in addressing inequality and in addressing refugee. Equity has chosen to be part of the solution. I'm glad to say this year we won the Oslo Nobel Business Prize for Business for Peace. And it's purely because of our investment in communities. Nobody should be left behind. We should involve communities in whatever we do. And in the specific subject of refugees, I'm really glad to say we have established a branch in Dadaab and Kakuma just to focus on refugees and help to integrate them with the host communities. And that has also happened in South Sudan and is also happening in northern Uganda. So I think we need concerted effort for all to make the world better. And lastly, on the last question, I don't think we can underestimate the importance of food safety. It is good to produce food, but it's also very important to ensure that it is safe food. So the issue of training the farmers, particularly in use of chemicals and pesticides, and the safety of the food before it is processed and taken to the market is something that is worthy pursuing. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Now, Judy, if you can briefly summarize the question on pesticides. I know Mr. Mwangi has touched a bit on it, but from the farmer's perspective, could you just tell us what needs to happen?
Thank you very much. First and foremost, congratulations to Equity for winning that banking for peace, business for peace. That's incredible. On responding to the pesticide issue, it is very important to note that there has been actually a campaign against harmful pesticides. We realize that sometimes what the farmers are using has already been banned in other continents. So we have become a dumping ground for some of these very harmful pesticides. I want to note that at the Association of Women in Agriculture, Kenya, AWAK, we are promoting organic farming, and even it is important to note that we really do not have, or even if we do, have not seen or been introduced to organic pesticides that have actually to have the link I was speaking about earlier, link in science. Because I know the researchers here or elsewhere have been working on something close to that, where we avoid chemicals that are harmful to promote food safety. And how do we do that? Sensitization and awareness creation to the farmers on what is harmful and what to avoid. We must make sure that our standardizations are apt, to use that word. In Kenya, we have CABs. And in Tanzania, I don't know what is it TEBS? But if we have such a bureau, because I believe every country has, then it is important to put the interests of the country first, of the residents, of the consumers of these products that are brought in. However, I believe we can have something that is homegrown and it's good and not harmful for our produce. So what can we do? Let us collaborate between science, the researchers, the farmers, the policymakers, and even the financiers to make that a reality. Because this will develop an opportunity. What we have been doing again as AWAK on that issue of food safety, we have enabled, we have partnered with organizations that are also working on food safety to train our farmers on how to produce food, on when to harvest after spraying the pesticides or acaricides or whatever it is that they're using on their crops, so that it is safe in the market. The consumer going to the market does not know just by looking that this is a dangerous consumable. I want to challenge Mr. Mwangi on this and the researchers around here on how to promote and how to incentivize and make sure that the farmers are actually using something that is good for the environment and good for consumption. In our organization, we are promoting soil health through incentivizing the use of any climate action activities. I know the international standards on carbon credits, but as countries within this continent, what can we do to promote climate action with our farmers? Can we just advise them, or should we also encourage them? There is something in one of our telecommunication networks that we call bonga points, where every point you make earns you something. And now, for carbon credits, Dr. Mwangi, if you're listening, if we promote climate action, for every agroforestry activity, for every harmless pesticides, for every organic farmer, for all the kind of activities that we are working towards promoting climate action, what can we do? Collaborate with even the policymakers to ensure that we have our own custom-made carbon credits before we scale up to the international standards, so that everything that the farmer does towards caring for the environment is recognized and appreciated and given as an incentive to continue doing the same.
Okay, thank you very much, Judy. I think it's a good question you're posing to us, but I would start by saying that we need to go back to the roots when we used to have our extension officers going around meeting farmers regularly. But as we know, most of our governments and the training patterns we have in our countries, we have a shortage of that. There's a big gap where in a situation you would have more than 3,000 plus being served by one extension officer. So as an institution, CABI came up with an initiative called Plant Twice to try and support government systems in taking the extension closer to farmers. And I would say that in the East African region, we work in all the countries where we train not only the farmers in terms of a safer use of chemicals, but also to come up with certain elements to ensure that as much as possible, we remain natural in terms of the biocontrol use of pest and management of pests and diseases. So at the moment, we have various initiatives, we have various training programs, working with the government, working with the extension service, working with the agro dealers to ensure that we do not use harmful pesticides. And I would say that, and I'll just echo what Dr. Mwangi said, because even in Kenya, Equity Foundation has financed some of these trainings of farmers in Kenya. So that is something that is commendable. And I would want us to look at it in terms of trying to tap into some of the initiatives that are already there. So we can provide this information. We have in the various countries come up with manuals, working with the governments to what we call the green list and the yellow list and the red list, such that you know the greener, the safer it is, the red, that's danger, so that should not be used within the government guidelines. So this is something that we can provide, and we'll give that to the organizers. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you, Maurice, for that. And now, very quickly, Ms. Mwanitu, if you can respond to the last question.
Yeah, to respond to your question, yes, we have been present for the past 5 years, and it might be a surprise for you to hear that TADB has been around, but you didn't know about it. The approach that we use from the beginning is working with partner financial institutions. So currently we are working with 11 banks where we extend a smallholder credit guarantee scheme. And these banks are wider in the country, like NMB, CRDB. So our work really from the beginning was to catalyze financing, to make a commercial bank understand that agriculture can be financed. And it can be financed by using affordable interest rates. So we have been catalyzing that and promoting that instrument, which is actually reducing the risk for other commercial banks to see agriculture cannot be financed. And as we move forward, we have seen that we need to promote ourselves more. So we are bringing the TADB water program, where this could be interest for the youth, because we want to partner with youth in different aspects, like whether it's innovation hubs that you have in your universities, or you have enterprises, which are in form of groups, so would like to work with you. But also in the part of women, we have already started to work with women through cooperatives. And currently, specifically for vegetable sector, we have already financed 1.1 billion in the vegetable sector. So as I said before, it's an integrated approach of financing, and we would like to let the entire conference know that we are present and would like to partner even with World Vegetable Center to make sure that we promote the products that we have for other smallholder farmers to get finance.
Okay, thank you very much. Lawrence, are you still with us? Lawrence, if you're still there? Okay, so as a parting shot, I'm going to request each panelist to just tell us in 7 words, and I will be counting. Your parting shot in 7 words. We'll start with Adrian, and I will count. Use the mic, please. 7 words, strictly.
We need actually to resolve the NTBs which will impact on trade on vegetable product in East Africa.
Thank you, you have exceeded. Mungwetosha, 7 words.
We definitely need to create a demand for traditional vegetables that will create more research interest in the field.
Judy, 7 words.
Embrace, support, produce, eat, finance, and market traditional African vegetables always.
Thank you. Ms. Temba?
We need to strengthen the agricultural value chain, encourage government and private partnership, focusing on improving productivity and profitability.
Okay. Ms. Mwanitu, 7 words. Some of you are cheating.
Integrated value chain financing is an answer for African traditional vegetables. So we can work in partnership.
Maurice, your 7 words parting shot.
Encourage premium prices to be paid to sustainably sourced foods.
Okay. James Mwangi, your 7 words.
As Africans, the onus is on us to promote that which is ours, and at the same time to be aware traditional African vegetables are resilient and are more adaptive in an environment of climate change.
Okay. Do you have Lawrence back? You know, they say that women have more words than men, but it seems in this panel, the men exceeded the quota of words.
I gave you 7.
Okay, I'm now going to ask you to stand again. Everybody standing up, including those joining us with the link. Everyone on your feet, please help me to give a round of applause to our panelists for a job very well done. And now I'm going to ask you to lift your right hand. Everybody lift your right hand and write number 6 continuously in the air. Number 6 with your right hand. Some of you are left-handed. With your right hand, okay, do not stop. Now lift your left leg and write number 9. Your hand writes number 6 and your leg writes number 9. Thank you very much, everybody, for your attention, and thank you to our panelists. Asanteni sana, you can have your seats.
Thank you very much for such a powerful presentation. Even to my co-moderators, Ronald Dianga for the afternoon session, the youth panel, and to Susan Mugwe. And it was good to see Equity Bank CEO James Mwangi putting money where? Where what? Where it matters. Yeah, he talked about 30% by 2020 what? By 2025, Equity Bank's loan book, 30% be about agriculture, will be in agriculture. Think about that. That's a bank that is committed. That's a commitment I don't take. Even I've tweeted it. I don't take lightly. That a bank is saying we're going to bank on agriculture. I wish out of that 30%, 50%, half of that can be in TAVs, or what Dr. Rogalema will now start calling it the superfoods. African superfoods. Huh? I think I like that. Has a good ring to it. African superfoods.